So I'm gonna keep it a buck with everybody here. At least like the few that I'm watching this channel or whatever. Um, I really don't like making this sort of content. I mean, like it's not like I don't like comics or anything. I mean, like it's just that I don't have the biggest passion for it. You know what I'm saying? It's like the same for anime as well. I used to be obsessed with that thing, and like now I barely watch it. At this point, I think I'm gonna just do my own thing instead of like just joining the other comic channels like Comic Fiend, Let's Talk Comics, or like Comic Casual. It's like yeah, I tried like following like their stuff, see what they did, maybe like try and do my own version of what they do. Yeah, that ain't working. I literally only did like 4 videos, and I had like zero passion to do anymore, and I got busy as well. But it was mainly me just not having a passion for it. So like, admittedly, there has been like this one concept that just keeps on popping up on like my YouTube recommendations, and that's like absolute variations of characters. I mean, like it started with the absolute universe from like DC, and like yeah, DC's been making this whole new universe which has like this whole thing about taking away a core piece of a character, and revolves around a universe that requires light to burn brighter than ever, since the place is filled with dark side energy. I guess some examples of these characters would include a Batman that isn't rich in this universe and instead being a city engineer, and a version of Wonder Woman that was raised in hell instead of Themyscira. I've seen people make versions of characters like an absolute Spider Man, Green Arrow, and for some odd reason, Ben 10. I know, kind of bizarre, but like, you know what? Then I was like, you know what? I want to take a crack at this. I do admit that I struggled with this though, and I kind of still am struggling. But like any constructive criticism, I'm willing to take. See, I would like to come up with a pitch for an absolute version. I said version of Shazam. I saw like one guy do it, but I mean, I'm going in a completely different direction with this. You see, I found the whole concept of Billy Batson's powers to be rather interesting. He has the powers of like 6 different Greek figures. I won't say gods because I mean, like, I don't think all of them are gods, but yeah, you get my point. And like, all he has to really do is just say the word Shazam in order to utilize these powers, and to also like change into that godly form as well. It's essentially like a blessing with swords, but what happens if you were to make these powers of his less of a blessing and more of, a curse? So I tried looking back at his origin, but realized this is the absolute universe. You're supposed to go all out with the differences, and in this version of events, I'm adding a very distinct difference from the beginning. He's not an orphan yet. You see, instead, he comes from a not so great family. His family isn't that well off, and they're willing to have Billy commit acts of theft and robbery since he's young. And even if he were to get caught and arrested, in his parents' minds, it would be fine since, law enforcement, they would just probably give him a slap on the wrist, a slight scolding, bring him back home to his parents right after, and then they would just have him do the whole thing again, over and over again. It wasn't like Billy could refuse either. You see, at any time that he tried to talk back or attempt to talk back, he would face repercussions from his parents. And you can probably assume this sort of repercussions I'm talking about. Over time, Billy's heart it would begin to be filled with anger and hatred for his family. He wanted to run away and escape his reality and all, but he had no idea where to go, and he genuinely had nowhere else. He'd reach his breaking point one day, and like he would just talk back to his parents, and right after They would silence him with a little too much force this time, and this would actually cause him to bleed a bit. He wouldn't care where he went because at this point, anywhere was better than being around them. Even though his parents, they would try to run after him and even call the police to find him, Billy would be too fast for them and too sneaky after all his experiences of robbery and theft that his parents had basically put him through. Eventually, he would find his way inside an old abandoned subway that he would collapse in from, exhaustion after running away for what felt like hours. And he would fall asleep in that subway, only to wake up in a completely different place that was now the Rock of Eternity. He would encounter the wizard here, and yeah, the wizard would basically acknowledge that, yeah, Billy, he was not necessarily a boy PFI or anything. Shoot, it was probably like the exact opposite here because of the way in which he grew up. He could tell there was a great amount of resentment and hatred in his heart, and this version of the wizard, he wouldn't be looking for somebody pure of height. Having had his whole entire council massacred by Black Adam several centuries ago, the wizard was looking for revenge. That same hatred the wizard had, he could see the same amount in Billy, and from such a young age too. He would grant the boy the abilities of a different set of Greek figures, those marked in infamy and suffering, the endurance and perseverance of Sisyphus, light and energy manipulation of Hyperion, the strength and stamina of Atlas, the ability to regenerate from injuries and return from the brink of death, coming from the likes of Zagreus, the knowledge and wisdom of Ascalaphus, and the range empowerment from Monotius. And my apologies for butchering any of the names. Um, I really don't have much excuses besides the fact that these names are foreign to me. This version of Shazam, he would have some distinctly different abilities in this version of events due to the different beings that composed his name. And the wizard would actually acknowledge that Billy was his champion when granting this new set of abilities and letting him know how to activate his powers. And due to the darker origin of his abilities, though, intrusive thoughts would actually get the better of Billy. The wizard cared solely about revenge in this universe, and so didn't care if Billy had any selfish ambitions. All that mattered is that, his champion, he would eventually kill Black Adam. And after leaving the Rock of Eternity, Billy would find himself outside where he would be found by the police and brought back home. His parents would feign tears seeing their lost child return to them only to, berate him and punish him after the police left. And Billy would curl his fists and question if that whole interaction with the wizard was real or not. Was that just a dream? And to test it out, he would whisper the word Shazam, causing for a beam of light to come down through the roof and strike him. In their son's place would stand a version of Shazam with long, unkempt hair and a beard. An unkempt, scraggly beard at that. His costume would look similar to his original version, but using a darker palette of his red, white, and gold. His cape and hood combo would be longer with a more dramatic appearance, being tattered and resembling shadows. He'd wear gold gauntlets wrapped in chains and be barefoot. In the middle of his chest, he would display the lightning bolt emblem, with the color being a darker blue. Well, a dark blue this time. Rather than representing Zeus's lightning, though, it would be focused on a constant reminder of how Monotius was defeated at the hands of the lightning god. His parents would scream in terror as the strange man had just taken the place of their son, and his eyes would be pulsating a deep, menacing blue, with the rage empowerment from Menoetius clouding his already angered mind. Billy would do something rash, and in one fell swoop, he would delete his parents from existence and effectively orphan himself. The sudden realization of his actions would hit him like a truck right after, as he would question what he had done and try to justify his actions, leading to him hearing some of the voices of the torturous prisoners beginning to speak to him. Not wanting to hear them anymore, he would say the word again to de-transform. The voices, they were gone, but the guilt, it was still there. With nowhere else to go, Billy would go on to roam the streets and fend for himself, this time with nowhere else to call home. With no family, blood or not, Billy would be forced to navigate life and his newfound powers on his own. At first, he would see his powers as a curse, but when seeing a girl about to get mugged, he would use his powers for this one instance in order to stop the crime from happening. It would it would lead to Billy realizing that he could use his powers for good, although the voices, they were still there. And he would try to suppress them, but there would be times when the voices, they just became too loud to drown out, constantly reminding him of how he was an awful human being for what he did to his own parents. They would mock him, leading to an all new internal struggle that he would have to overcome despite having all the power in the world. And that is basically my absolute Shazam. So if you like this sort of content, let me know in the comments below to like also boost the algorithm, all that stuff. Maybe hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, I don't really got much else to say. Peace.